Tonight, raising the stakes.
Please do not cause further alienation amongst Albertans.
Jason Kenney goes to Ottawa, threats in hand. At Issue looks at what it means for Canada.
We're looking for the support that we deserve.
Professional female hockey players issue an ultimatum. Will the NHL give them an assist?
And living downstream from a dam that's wide open. The human stories beneath the flood. This is The National. He promised Alberta voters he was going to challenge Ottawa, and 2 days after he was sworn in as Premier, Jason Kenney delivered in person, telling his federal hosts in no uncertain terms what he thinks of a key parliamentary bill.
It will further alienate Albertans from their attachment to Canada if they see their federal government, instead of trying to help us get our economy back on track, further damages it with this bill.
That bill is C-69. It's the Liberal government's plan for reviewing energy projects. But Kenney didn't stop at the shoreline of the economy. He waded right into the waters of national unity. Salima Shivji looks at how that went over.
Good to be here. Thank you very much for having me here. Thank you so much.
Polite greetings with a hint of underlying tension.
I'm sure we'll talk about a few things we disagree on as well, but...
Smiles and pleasantries, a far cry from the drumbeat of Jason Kenney's election campaign.
If Justin Trudeau is a friend of Alberta, I'd hate to see an enemy of this province.
But that Jason Kenney did show up earlier today at the Senate with fighting words.
Our goal is to make it very clear that if this bill passes in anything like its current form, there will be an immediate constitutional challenge.
He's coined Bill C-69, the No Pipelines Bill, the government's proposed overhaul of how new energy projects are assessed. Kenney didn't mince words in front of senators today.
This bill does not need a nip and tuck. It needs complete reconstructive surgery, or it needs to be put out of its misery.
First and foremost, Kenney thinks it violates Alberta's right to regulate its own resources.
And the president.
The three federal ministers defending the bill in the face of pointed questions beg to differ.
Greenhouse gas are an area inherently of shared jurisdiction, shared responsibility between the provincial and federal governments.
Kenney is vowing to take Ottawa to court, and he warns passing C-69 as is would tear the country apart and inflame growing separatist sentiment out west.
Please do not cause further alienation amongst Albertans who feel like we just can't get a fair deal.
Strong words and lingering threats that don't sit well with the Liberals.
I found the language, quite frankly, disturbing.
I think it's irresponsible for anyone to suggest that Alberta will leave the Confederation.
It's the first threat against Ottawa Alberta's new premier has repeated since being sworn in, capping off a whirlwind visit here that seems to have solidified his role as one of the Prime Minister's biggest Conservative foes. And tomorrow, Kenney will meet with another one, his ally, Ontario Premier Doug Ford. Salima Shivji, CBC News, Ottawa.
Kenney's calls for Ottawa to kill Bill C-69 aren't new. It's actually something he and many Albertans have been calling for months. But what will change if the bill, in fact, becomes law? To say Bill C-69 has been controversial might be understating things. The government says it is trying to make things easier.
You no longer will have to go through separate processes that overlap at the provincial and the federal level. There'll be one project, one assessment for one project.
Gone is the National Energy Board. Now the new Impact Assessment Agency of Canada will review projects looking at energy and the environment. But project proponents worry the non-economic factors to be considered might dominate, things like health, gender, and the effects on Indigenous peoples. And on that score, they worry the bill doesn't set out exactly what proper consultation with Indigenous peoples looks like. Then there are concerns about time, though assessments should be done within 600 days. Any member of the public can weigh in, not just those impacted or experts. That could drag things out, but the government hopes that would lead to fewer court challenges. Of course, Jason Kenney's trip to Ottawa came as so many here are dealing with flooding. Ian, you've been looking at that story today.
Well, Rosemary, after weeks of rising waters, people finally got a reason to exhale. The Ottawa River peaking this evening, and the water is expected to recede.
It will not immediately subside, but it won't get any worse. It should stabilize relatively high levels for another week, and then we should see the subsidence after that.
The damage, already devastating, will soon become even clearer. But there is more good news. Word that even with more rain coming, a second round of flooding is not expected. But for some, the hurt continues. On the surging Ottawa River sits the Chaudière Ring Dam. Many living downstream are wondering if it could have been used to limit their damage. Olivia Stefanovic found out.
Hear it roar. All 50 spillway gates at the Chaudière Ring Dam are open, the second time in recorded history.
The velocity of this water is 3 times what Niagara Falls is.
The mighty Ottawa River, too strong for Hydro Ottawa to even generate electricity from its sheer force. The equivalent of 3 Olympic-sized swimming pools gush through every second.
Stopping that water, you're going to push the water back up. You're going to start to flood other parts of the city.
You can feel the power of the water even from here. River regulators say there's simply too much of it to hold back, and all of this water has to go somewhere. And that somewhere is downriver.
Our place is worth nothing anymore.
Straight to Roland Lafrance's home.
Everywhere we got water. It's unbelievable.
Lafrance has lived here for almost 50 years and has only seen 2 other floods. First in the 70s, then the historic surge in 2017. Lafrance wants dam operators to bring down the spring runoff sooner.
They know we got a lot of snow. Well, look at it, take care of it. When it melts, be prepared.
But operators say they can only move as fast as the melt.
Even now, much of the water that is to come into the system still is present in snow. So it's not possible to evacuate water that is not yet there and available.
They say they begin the process of controlling the water as soon as they can.
We're deeply sympathetic to anyone that's lost their houses or were impacted by the flooding, but it's not because of anything we're doing here or not doing.
More to come, but people here are hoping at least the worst has passed. Olivia Stefanovic, CBC News, Ottawa.
You can imagine the stress for all those people forced out of their homes by flooding in Ontario, Quebec, and New Brunswick. But coming back can take an emotional toll as well. The CBC's Alison Northcott went to one community near Montreal.
The water here was through about this height.
For days, Alain Pilon has been running on adrenaline, dealing with the damage to his home.
A lot of video from my family, my kids when they was young, and they grow and everything. So it's all gone, finished.
But the reality of his loss is starting to sink in.
It's tough a bit. It's quite tough, but what you want? Nothing he could do about it, you know.
Joël Godmer says he's taking it one day at a time.
The impact, you can feel it a couple of years later, right? Because now you're in the moment, right? But if in 5 years from now, 10 years from now, how I'm gonna take that?
Camille Champagne is seeing her submerged mobile home for the first time in an area that's still flooded. That's her car, barely visible under the water. As she wades inside, she knows her home will never be the same.
I'm speechless. It's a lot of emotion to see everything just gone.
Hundreds in St. Marthe-sur-le-Lac are facing similar devastation, uncertainty, and loss. Teams offering psychological help are going door to door. Coordinator Noémie Lacombe says residents might experience stress, anger, and sometimes suicidal thoughts. She encourages people to talk about it and ask for help. Experts say the mental health impact from a disaster can linger for years.
But it's crucial for us to understand in the period of recovery and rebuilding that we pay attention to some of those mental health impacts.
Camille Champagne says she's thankful for friends, family, and neighbors helping her through.
Everyone just gonna have to be there for each other.
Alison Northcott, CBC News, St. Marthe-sur-le-Lac, Quebec.
In central Ontario, the area nicknamed Cottage Country is still under a state of emergency.
When I was walking through, I saw a bunch of people's homes that they're on stilts and, you know, it didn't make a difference at this point because they're all flooded.
Today, the military was out on the water surveying the damage and trying to get people out. Hundreds of Army personnel have been dispatched to the Muskoka region to help with evacuations, sandbagging, and other flood response efforts. The town of Bracebridge says one branch of the Muskoka has started receding, another branch has stabilized. Health Canada is reminding people today about the dangers of mold inside those flooded homes and cottages. And the Canadian Red Cross is now handing out free kits to residents who need help cleaning up.
Returning to the latest upheaval in North American women's pro hockey. A day after the Canadian League officially closed down, some of the biggest stars in the game issued an ultimatum.
We've been putting in a ton of work to get women's hockey up to this point, so that's why we're taking the stand.
Carly Campbell and 200 other top players say they will boycott the upcoming season of the National Women's Hockey League, the only remaining pro league on the continent. They say they will not lace up the skates until players get the compensation and the support that they deserve. The players are not without ideas on how to turn things around either. As our Jamie Strachan explains, they're looking for help from the biggest hockey machine on the planet.
I didn't have the option to play professionally when I was a little girl.
Former Toronto Furies all-star defenseman Carly Campbell says this fight is worth it, and that it's time to take a stand over the dismal state of the game and its woefully low pay for players.
I'm not looking for anything extravagant, we're just looking for something standard so that we can play hockey full-time without having to worry about our bills or raising a family.
Campbell has been without a team since the CWHL folded last month. She and others are now looking to the NHL with its marketing reach and resources to help stabilize the game.
You're going to get different opinions. I think the NHL is the white knight.
It's the latest twist in a sport that has long searched for solid footing and struggled to keep fans' attention beyond the Olympics. Agent Brant Feldman, who represents some of the 200 players, says others in the hockey community have a role to play as well.
USA Hockey and Hockey Canada should be getting involved. In both of those guys' cases, they have a fundamental responsibility to try and help grow the sport in both Canada and the United States.
People make decisions.
But sports marketing executive Carrie Kaplan says the players' move is a risky one, and that whatever comes next, the women's game needs to change fundamentally.
You have to make it more than great hockey. It has to be great entertainment. It has to be an event so people can come for 3 hours with their families and friends and have an amazing time.
Kaplan also says any potential investor will have to see a return.
I think the Women's League comes forward historically and has said we need support. It's not a cause. The Children's Hospital is a cause. Women's hockey is not a cause.
For its part, the NHL is watching and waiting. Late today, it released a statement saying its conversations with players continue about ways to grow the women's game at the professional level, but no mention of going any further yet. Jamie Strachan, CBC News, Toronto.
So why are pro hockey salaries so low for women? More than anything, it is a lack of critical mass. The NWHL salary cap is just $100,000. Compare that to the NHL's salary cap of $83 million. But while the NHL has 31 teams playing 82 regular season games to an average crowd of 17,000 paying fans, the Women's League has only 5 teams playing 16 regular season games with an average of just 830 people. It's those numbers the women are looking for help to turn around.
Facebook kicked some big names off its platforms today, saying they violated the company's ban against hate and violence. One of them, Louis Farrakhan, the leader of Nation of Islam, who has promoted hate towards Jewish people. Another, U.S. conspiracy theorist Alex Jones. And Milo Yiannopoulos, a former editor at Breitbart News, whose planned appearance at the University of California at Berkeley 2 years ago sparked violent protests. Facebook has also banished the extremist group known as Soldiers of Odin. Its chapters here and in Europe are known for anti-immigrant rhetoric and violence. But it seems one Alberta branch of the Royal Canadian Legion didn't have a problem with that. Rafi Bouchikanian explains.
Because of their anti-immigrant rhetoric and violent protests like this one, last month Facebook called the Soldiers of Odin a hate group and banned them. but the group has found a warmer welcome at the Grand Prairie branch of the Royal Canadian Legion. Several branch members are also members of the Soldiers of Odin, and last week the Legion rented its hall to the group for a community dinner. The Legion insists it did its research.
They are not a racial group. They're not anti-immigration. They're not neo-Nazi skinheads. Okay, they're just a group of people who want to do things for the community.
But the Soldiers of Odin's factions across Canada paint a different picture, taking part in anti-immigration protests from Vancouver to Toronto. The Grand Prairie chapter says,
"We've always been pro-immigration, saying that, you know, we're all about legal immigration. I don't think anybody really wants to see mass amounts of people walking across borders."
The Canadian Anti-Hate Network says, "Don't be fooled."
We are seeing expressions of hate that we have never seen before in modern age.
It points out the soldiers started out as neo-Nazis in Finland, are known to conduct patrols in neighborhoods or even shopping malls where they harass immigrants, demanding ID.
Of all organizations to take them under their wing, for lack of a better term, the Royal Canadian Legion, you would think would be the last one to do so. Here we have a group that has its roots in the actual groups that veterans fought during World War II. It's kind of a sad and terrible irony.
We reached out to provincial and national Legion leadership. The national office says it asked the provincial office to look into it. Alberta says they have and believe no bylaws have been broken. Rafi Bujikani on CBC News, Edmonton.
To get a sense of just how prevalent white nationalist groups are in Canada, we went to Barbara Perry. She's one of Canada's leading experts in right-wing extremism.
We're thinking now it's well over 200, closing in on 300 active groups across Canada.
You see them online and at protests. Groups like Storm Alliance, Northern Guard, and the 3 Percenters, a group that dresses in paramilitary gear and acts as security at rallies. To one, they brought the devices that are used to stun cattle. Nearly 4,000 people follow the Alberta chapter online, and right-wing politics in Europe and the United States is giving their ideology a boost.
I think that's part of the context that's contributing to not just the growth, but the emboldening and empowering of these groups.
In a word, fear.
A sense of threat, the replacement of white Europeans, and specifically white Christian Europeans, by shifting immigration patterns.
Islamophobia, anti-Semitism, homophobia, and misogyny all play a role. And geography matters.
In Alberta, for example, long history there of anti-Indigenous sentiment. That's being now, I wouldn't say replaced, but supplemented by hostility towards newcomers. Looking at Quebec, a very different dynamic there. It's an extension of the history of religious conflict there.
Recruitment does happen offline, in person, and in posters, but it drives people online where they don't just get involved, they get connected.
Toronto white nationalists connecting with Calgary white nationalists, but also then connecting with those in Europe, in France, or in Birmingham, for example. So I think that that's really powerful to have that sense of belonging to something that big.
And in that world, hateful ideas suddenly seem so normal. These groups don't just need people to survive, they need cash. Some rely on donations, but some charge membership fees to get past their public portals and into the inner circle. Among the other stories we're following tonight, a heartbreaking development from the Christchurch Mosque shootings. Keep in mind, the accused there, a man with violent white supremacist ideas. Nearly 2 months after that attack, one of the injured victims has died. The Turkish citizen had been in intensive care. He died overnight during surgery, and he's the 51st victim of the attack. 9 others are still in hospital. They are in stable condition.
There was a confirmed case of measles on board a cruise ship which visited our island.
Officials say that cruise ship has been quarantined. Passengers and crew must stay on board, and 100 doses of the vaccine have been distributed. As you can see, the ship is called Free Winds, and that's the same name as a ship owned and operated by the Church of Scientology. And a development today on the containers of garbage a Canadian company shipped to Manila years ago. The Philippines and its president wants the trash gone, and it looks like that's going to happen. Katie Simpson has the details.
The Port of Vancouver is about to get a shipment that's a good 6 years overdue. Tons of rotting Canadian garbage could be on its way here as early as this month after an embarrassing political standoff.
We are hopeful that we can come to a resolution. We think it is really important.
Canada is offering to reclaim more than 6 dozen containers of trash that were sent to Manila starting in 2013. The Philippines mistakenly accepted the household waste, including adult diapers, from a private Canadian company after it was improperly labeled as recycling. For years, Filipinos have been demanding Canada come get the garbage, and last week, President Rodrigo Duterte even threatened war.
I will advise Canada that your garbage is on the way. Prepare a grand reception. Eat it if you want to.
If Duterte accepts Canada's proposal, the Environment Minister will have to figure out where the trash goes once it gets to Vancouver. The NDP is worried the government isn't prepared to deal with the shipment, but says the move is necessary.
Well, it shouldn't have been sent out in the first place. I think it's really a black eye for Canadians internationally.
The government isn't saying yet how much this is going to cost. The private company that shipped the garbage no longer exists, so there's no one to hold to account. Katie Simpson, CBC News, Ottawa.
Still ahead on The National, a new survey suggests the wage gap may start early in this country, as in during childhood. We'll explain.
And in our moment, the diplomatic door knocker heard around the world. The story behind a viral video.
But first, much more on our top story. Jason Kenney's fiery first trip to Ottawa. Thank goodness. At issue is here. Chantal, Andrew, and Andre Demise right after this.
If this bill proceeds, together with C-48, it will be a message to the people of Alberta that their federal government doesn't care about a devastating period of economic adversity in our province and is so careless about it that it's prepared to violate exclusive provincial jurisdiction. I plead with you as federalists to understand the national unity implications of it.
Okay, Jason Kenney brought his message and a warning to Ottawa today. This was his first face-to-face meeting with the Prime Minister since becoming Premier. Safe to say the two had a lot to talk about, but were they able to find any common ground, and what should we make of Kenney's strategy here? It's Thursday, and it's At Issue is here to dig into all of this and more. Chantal Hébert is in Montreal, Andrew Coyne is in Toronto, and Andre Demise joins us from Winnipeg tonight. Good to see everybody. I'll start with you, Chantal. What do you make of Jason Kenney's strategy today? This sort of warning that there's a constitutional challenge coming when it comes to Bill C-69, that there's a national unity crisis on the front burner if this continues.
3 points. The first, the election was 2 weeks ago. There would or might have been merit in letting more time elapse between the election and today, not because of any calendar-related issue, but because it allows one who has just won an election to move from campaign rhetoric to governmental rhetoric. The second point is, having covered a fair number of premiers from Quebec who came to Ottawa and pitched the same kind of message, there is also merit in not using your nuclear bomb or not showing what you think is a nuclear bomb on your first appearance, be it only because if things don't work out your way, you can't go back and use it again or say you're going to use it when you can't. And third, I would urge, I guess, Jason Kenney to resist the temptation of feeling in his comfort zone at the federal level, and he clearly does, and overdoing the federal-provincial thing at the expense of the governance thing.
All right, that's lots of stuff. Andrew, what did you make of him today?
I was a little more impressed that everybody seems to be agreeing to stay within the law, first of all. Everybody's suing each other, everybody's taking everybody to court. You know, we've got three provinces taking the feds to court over the carbon tax. We've got Alberta threatening court challenges over both C-48 and C-69. We've got BC challenging them over whether the feds can put a pipeline through without BC regulating, et cetera. But that's fine. That's at least staying within the bounds of the law. And I would also say within the bounds of some measure of political civility. There was some rhetoric, but people were urging the feds, for example, that they should just reject the Trans Mountain now to punish Alberta for electing Jason Kenney. They haven't done that. Kenney could have, I suppose, not just proclaimed Bill 12, the one allowing them to cut off the oil flow to BC, but he hasn't done that. He's not. He's saying he's not going to lift the cap on emissions, the 100 megaton cap on emissions, which is actually not in place. All that being said, people are kind of keeping their powder relatively dry, I think, compared to how much worse this could be at this point.
Okay, well, I want to come back to that. But Andre, what did you think of the way he sort of, I mean, he gets a lot of attention and he's a very good talker and he makes his case forcefully, and he certainly did that today. What did you make of him?
Well, you actually hit the nail on the head there. The entire conversation right now at this point is just aesthetic. So it's not as if there's any sort of policy-oriented strategy happening here. What needs to happen for Jason Kenney is that he's seen to be blustering towards the Fed, and that he's seen to be defending Alberta's interests. Now, whether any of this will amount to anything, if we're talking about Bill C-69 and the challenge to that, if we're talking about the threatening to turn off the taps, it's not as though there's anything driving this besides rallying Albertans behind the flag of oil interests. And frankly, it's at this point, it's kind of boring. Actually, it doesn't really stand for anything. There's nothing that we're going to see come out of this.
Except the people in Alberta would say presumably that's what they think because they elected him, that's what they need, is someone who's willing to be not only a cheerleader but a defender and hopefully get to something.
Well, assuming that, yeah.
Go ahead, Andre.
I was going to say, assuming that there was a strategy behind this besides, again, rallying behind oil interests. If we're talking about, for example, the attack on Bill C-69, what we're really talking about is the fact that Kenney and the UCP government do not want the public to have public consultations and possibly be able to find a way to veto some of these upcoming and proposed projects. But the very people that would be the most highly affected by any changes to their local environment, whether we're talking about fisheries or wildlife, et cetera, the people who are the most heavily affected and the environments that are most heavily affected, essentially he's saying that you don't get to have a say in this. The people who do get to have a say are either oil companies or the people who work for them.
Okay, Chantal?
I'm not convinced that that is really what he means. And I say this from the perspective of having watched various Quebec governments argue the same point, that is, that the province is well able to make that assessment and to take care of its own people without the federal government wading in to decide for Alberta what should or what should not happen. But I do agree that and that was my point about campaign rhetoric, it is hard to see real strategy behind it. I was struck by the reference to René Lévesque, the founder of the Parti québécois. And just a reminder for those who have forgotten, René Lévesque lost his biggest battles against someone called Trudeau.
That's a darn good reminder. Why don't you riff off that a little bit there, Andrew? Because I also, watching that national unity argument, whether it's real or not, I find it still worrying. I just wonder whether that's a good avenue to go down for a country that has experienced what we've experienced.
So first of all, I think Albertans have every right to be extremely angry, upset, whatever word you like to use, at the state of play right now. That they are essentially being told by various sources that they cannot get their major export to market. They've got a federal government that, whether you agree with it or not, is bringing in basically a special tax on that product. They've got the federal government also saying you can't ship it by tanker off the coast of BC, though tankers are allowed to go off the Atlantic coast. You've got provinces on their right and on their left saying, we don't want your oil to come through our province, even though pipelines are a federal matter. So they're right to be perturbed about that. I don't particularly care for some of Mr. Kenney's answers. I think the federal government has to have a role in environmental policy when we're talking about a global problem like climate change. To say that can just be handled by the provinces, I think is kind of parochial. Any more than I agree with BC saying the Fed shouldn't be able to put a pipeline through because we want to horn in on it and have a provincial responsibility for something that is quintessentially a federal matter, interprovincial pipeline. So the provinces will make provincial-minded arguments, but fair enough. They can take that to court, test it there, that's fine. Where I think he crosses the line is when he starts invoking a separatist threat. I, first of all, don't think it's actually real in Alberta. I don't think it's justified. But I also think, you're playing with fire when you start throwing those words around at the federal level. That's not an appropriate way to make your case. You can absolutely talk about the justified grievances of Alberta, but I think when you start talking about the separatist word, that is not particularly responsible.
Andre?
Speaking to your comment, Andrew, about not being able to get the product out to market, Konrad Jakubuski actually wrote a very good article in the Globe and Mail recently, where it essentially illustrated the difference between, for example, a conventional oil extraction that happens to be, what's happening in, for example, in Saudi Arabia, which HSBC, turned down. Pretty much every possible means of meeting with the Kenney government, and is now, I guess, flirting with the Saudi government. But this is conventional oil extraction. And on the other hand, the bitumen extraction is not conventional and it poses the risk of becoming a stranded asset. This is not to pick on Alberta. This is just simply the way that the oil is extracted from this particular patch of land has an incredibly high environmental impact. And the globe is moving away from these means of production. So, it's unfortunate, and it's not as though I don't have any compassion for the people of Alberta, but unfortunately this method of oil extraction has a catastrophic impact on greenhouse gas emissions.
Okay, last word to you, Chantal.
Well, you do realize all those court challenges will go all the way up to the Supreme Court if they do happen, and those that are happening. So we're not going to get any answers on any of those things until after the next election. And they could become moot if we change governments, and Andrew Scheer is serious about going back to the drawing board and drawing more laws that more people can challenge on you.
Okay, thanks everyone. We're going to do something unusual, but we're going to put everybody on pause, and we're going to do another round with At Issue after this short break. Stick around.
I absolutely accept the conclusions that experts have in this field when people point to climate change causing more extreme weather events.
In the 21st century, if you don't have a plan for climate change, you don't have a plan for the economy.
Coming up, we'll look at the politics of climate change, how political parties are responding to this reality, what kind of effect it could have on the election. That's next.
Today, we mark the one-year anniversary since the leader of the federal Conservatives, Andrew Scheer, promised that he'd be releasing his plan to fight climate change shortly. Well, it's a year later, and we're still waiting.
Our plan, as I mentioned, will be unveiled with plenty of time for Canadians to analyze it, to evaluate it. But it has been quite some time since the Liberals promised their environmental plan, and today all we have is an ineffective carbon tax.
Recent floods in parts of eastern Canada have brought climate change back to the debate. I'm not sure it ever left, but it's in the forefront now. Lots of differences of opinions about how to handle this reality. We're back for another round of At Issue. Chantal, Andrew, and Andre. Andrew, let's start with you on this one. I thought, the flooding sort of is in everybody's face right now, particularly if you're going through it. And so I wonder if that makes you think about climate change more immediately and what you want to see from leaders when they decide how to deal with this issue, and whether that will factor into the election in a different way because of that.
I doubt it by the time the election comes around. First of all, I think there's some debate about whether this or that flood was actually the caused by global warming. But the general point of increasing incidence of extreme weather events is certainly well taken. And it's going to put it top of mind for some people for some time. But the election's not for several months from now. I suspect by then the number of people for whom the floods are driving their vote is going to be relatively small.
What do you think, Andre? I mean, this should be an issue that is nonpartisan in a way, climate change, and maybe it is, and it's just the policy approach that is different.
Well, the unfortunate thing is that I don't know that any of the major parties are taking a policy approach that's going to substantially address the problem. I agree with Andrew that I don't think it's going to necessarily be an election issue. I think that for most people what's front of mind is their immediate economic circumstances. So whether they're able to find work, whether they're able to take care of families and so forth. But you just take a look around at what's happening. If you look at the statistics, I mean, the Insurance Bureau between 2008 and today has basically shown that the cost of each catastrophic weather event has practically quadrupled. So you can argue whether it's due to man-made climate change or not, but the fact is this is what's happening. And without policy set up to address that, I mean, this is just what we can expect for the immediate future.
Chantal?
No one expected refugees to become a huge issue or a conversation topic for a week in the last federal election until the body of a young child washed ashore. And if we'd been having an election campaign over the past few weeks, the weekend floods would have pushed climate change and changed the optics on everyone's policies, probably hurt the Conservatives tremendously. And they were given a sample of that over the weekend. I'm sure the floods by next fall, or I hope, will be a thing of the past, but there is no guarantee that there will not be some other catastrophic climate event that will not propel it to the front. And I think every party, but in particular the Conservatives, have to think about how they're framing their policy so that they don't get caught, as they got caught on the refugee issue.
Last word to you on that, Andrew.
Yeah, I think this is one of those issues where parties try to neutralize it. So if the Conservatives have any kind of political savvy, which I think they do, they will at least have it something they can talk about, something they can say, this is our plan. Whether it's an adequate plan, I think maybe people will have a lot of things to say about that. But for electoral purposes, they have to have something they can point to and say, this is our plan.
Okay, I'm going to leave it there. Thanks, everybody, for doing 2 blocks. I appreciate that. Before we go, be sure to subscribe to At Issue, the podcast, for extra content. Lots this week. We're going to talk about a little more on the same topic, latest round of those tensions between Alberta and BC. Look for it on iTunes, any major podcast app, our website, cbcnews.ca/The National.
And still ahead on the program, the story behind our favorite video of the day. The Japanese Prime Minister picked up a souvenir during his recent trip to Canada. In our moment, we'll meet the men who carved that door knocker. But first.
In case you missed it, new research suggests the gender wage gap might start early in this country. The Girl Guides of Canada and Ipsos surveyed teens between 12 and 18 about summer work and found girls working full-time in formal jobs like retail make about $3 less per hour than boys, while girls working full-time in less formal jobs, save for family, make more than $6 less. Now, these are only averages. It's not clear, for example, that a teen girl would make less babysitting than a teen boy. In the adult workforce, Canadian women earn 87 cents for every dollar a man makes. And the head of Girl Guides Canada says that could be holding teens back.
One of the things they had told us was that they were not pursuing careers of their dreams because they were actually worried that they wouldn't be compensated fairly.
The survey also found a big difference in where teens work. Girls more likely to find jobs caring for others like babysitting or healthcare, while boys are more likely to do maintenance or gardening.
There is that gap, and we don't know if they're doing it by choice or even what that choice is informed by.
She says it's important that girls learn how to negotiate.
I think those conversations are actually difficult for adults, let alone for girls. So having some activities where they're actually doing those negotiations would probably go a long way.
Her advice for teen girls starting the search for a summer job?
For them, I think it's really important that they take a minute to value what they're providing. And the second thing is really thinking about what you want to do. So, is this something that you're going to learn skills in order to set you up for the future?
In other words, girls, ask for what you want.
When you were on the set making Star Wars, did you have an inkling at the time that it would be a great box office success?
Well, we thought that it would be successful, but nobody realized how successful it would be.
I feel like you'll recognize this actor better in his full makeup. Peter Mayhew, the man who brought Chewbacca to the big screen in Star Wars, has passed away. His family says he died in his home in Texas on Tuesday at the age of 74. A fiery crash at a border crossing in BC has left one driver dead and another in hospital. Witnesses say a Porsche jumped the curb and hit a minivan at the Peace Arch, causing it to burst into flames almost immediately. The driver of that Porsche was pulled to safety.
Despite what you heard from the prosecutor in the courtroom today, this case is not about hacking.
The lawyer for Julian Assange speaking outside court following an extradition hearing today. Assange is wanted in the United States for allegations he conspired with former U.S. intelligence analyst Chelsea Manning to download classified documents. The case was adjourned until May 30th. More now in a Fifth Estate investigation we brought you earlier this week about a scheme by SNC-Lavalin to illegally influence Canadian federal elections. Executives, directors, even some of their spouses making donations in the mid-2000s to federal parties, but SNC secretly reimbursed them. That practice isn't allowed under the Canadian election law, but the Quebec engineering giant didn't face charges, instead entering into a compliance agreement. As the Fifth Estate's Julian Finley explains, there were angry calls today for the Elections Commissioner to explain why.
Dean Del Mastro is hardly a poster boy for electoral fair play. 4 years ago, the former Conservative MP went to jail for violating Canada's election spending laws.
That was not a good day.
The fact one of Canada's most powerful companies got away with far more serious violations, he says, is an outrage.
We have a disproportionate system of justice, and some people, it seems that it shields and protects, and other people it comes down on with full force. I felt the full force and might of the federal government.
Del Mastro is now calling on Parliament to question the Elections Commissioner about why SNC-Lavalin was allowed to avoid prosecution by signing a compliance agreement. He's not the only one asking.
Why was this deal struck? Was there any political influence brought to them to bear? Because it seems a very, very unusual use of a non-compliance order for something of this magnitude.
The last time the terms SNC-Lavalin, compliance agreement, and PMO came together, we had 4 months of a drip, drip, drip of information coming out. Can they just put us all out of our misery and let us know whether or not the Prime Minister's office interfered in this matter with SNC-Lavalin?
The only thing the Prime Minister has said so far is that what happened with the SNC donations is in the past.
May have moved forward on transparency and openness, and that is not what happens anymore.
But how does he know? Back in 2016, the Liberals told Elections Canada they had no prior knowledge of ineligible contributions made by the 18 SNC employees and their spouses. Did they do an investigation, ask the 18 who their party contacts were? Today, the Liberals told us they did review records and speak to party officials, but they did not contact any of the 18 who made the donations. As for the Election Commissioner, after refusing all our requests for an interview, he finally issued a statement today, saying that in his 12 years on the job, there has never been a political attempt to influence or intervene in any of his decisions. Interestingly, what he did not say is there's never been an attempt to communicate. Julian Finley, CBC News, Toronto.
Next on The National, a behind-the-video story in our moment. I could watch this video all day long. Meet the craftsman behind Shinzo Abe's new Canadian souvenir right after this. So Japan's Prime Minister Shinzo Abe visited Canada last week, and he didn't, as it turns out, go home empty-handed. Today he installed his brand new Canadian souvenir, a door knocker in the shape of a beaver. Doesn't every Canadian have one of those? We loved it so much, the world did really, that we tracked down the artist behind it, a pair of wood-carving brothers north of Quebec City. And now in an exclusive TV interview, they show us the workshop where all their magic happens. Here's the moment.
Que le ministre japonais a installé sur son bordure de porte et que sa femme a et ce produit est fait en bois, en tilleul, qu'on appelle du bois blanc, sculpté à la main, et ce produit, c'est des perches de ferme qui existent depuis 100 ans. Alors, on est deux artistes. Il y a moi, Denis Tremblay, et mon frère Jean-Lionel Tremblay, qui produit toutes ces cogneurs de porte.
So people have been watching that little tiny video on a loop all day long. They're just like obsessed with that moment. And I myself find it particularly soothing.
So the video, the music is kind of kitschy,
Yes,
but
yes.
but the door knocker is not at all. Like if you look at it, it's, I mean, what do I know about art? But it looks like beautiful folk art.
It's lovely.
I went to the website. Did you, the Tremblay website?
No.
Because I could imagine getting one of those door knockers. Like you have a door knocker already.
Yes. Yeah,
So
I do,
you're
but
not-
it's pretty lame. So I could think about replacing it.
Yeah, maybe we'll get custom national door knockers.
Okay.
Pay for it ourselves. It'll be kind of fun. That is something to think about on this May 2nd. That is the National. Good night.
Good night.